Monday.
As Pat has just reminded me, this is Monday. This is Monday, and the sun isn't shining, but there's a brightness in the air. And do you know,
Yeah,
Pat, every week we gain something like 14 minutes. You can take it 2 minutes a day
yeah,
of
yeah.
brightness, of
One day
extra.
on
Yeah.
RRT last week, Judy was an expert on all this time thing, and he was able to say exactly. I think last week we were up an hour and something from the 21st of December.
Oh, roll on is all I can say. But you're the wise man. You see, you had a holiday in the sun. Um,
Yeah,
so that should be carrying you over. You shouldn't be
I,
concerned.
I, just lovely to break up the winter. I'm deadly
Oh,
serious, and that
yeah.
was the idea. Jesus, dude, this has been a very long winter. I
Uh,
don't understand.
would you do it
Yeah,
next year, do you think?
well, the wife's got a taste for it now, so
No older.
God willing, we'll be doing it
Right.
again.
Yeah, I think I might do it myself. In fact, I might send Christmas. And my son has been urging us to spend Christmas in warmer climes, which he's done himself and his family a couple of times. So we might do it
Yeah,
next year. Or this year. Anyway, let's get to the meat of the matter. You have a few suggestions of topics we might talk about, and I have a number of topics that I think we might talk about. But being a polite and well brought up boy, I will say, let's start with Pat.
yeah.
Chinese balloon. Discuss.
Dude, I had to laugh at that. I'm so one of the funniest things I sort of, But then I started thinking about it as quite serious, and I read a thing this CNN this morning. They're taking it very serious. They think it's a harbinger of something else that's going on. They think that some years ago China would not have even attempted to do this. To fly a balloon, and they don't buy for a second that it was accidental. Apparently, they're claiming there's all sorts of equipment on board this and all the rest of it. And they think this is a new China flexing its muscles, and they're trying out just to see how far they can push it. I presume Taiwan might be on their sights and so on. But they said years ago they would have certainly not attempted to fly a surveillance balloon across America and so on. And they think it was a test to see if America would do anything about it and so on and so on. Now, Jude, that might be overstating the case and so on, but that's what the American analysts are seem to be saying, or at least the bit that I am saying. And of course, Jude, apparently the CNN said, and as usual, and the sort of America that's now deeply divided, rather than coming together, the Republicans and the Democrats, they're fighting each other, saying that Joe Biden was weak, he should have shot this out of the air and so on a long time ago and so on. But Jude, the big thing about this, is there a new world order forming? Like the Chinese and the Russians, and the days of the hegemony of the United States as a sort of the world's policeman over?
Well, my impression is that that's the case. That it's certainly heading that way. Because I mean, if the Chinese economy goes down or having a hard time, the world economy has a hard time. And if the Chinese economy is flourishing, the world's economy flourishes. So we tend to look to China now rather than to the States. But to come back to this balloon, if it's supposed to be a spy balloon,
Yeah.
wasn't it a rather obvious way of doing it? Like there must be, I mean, a giant bloody balloon that you can see with the naked eye from the skies, in the
Yeah.
skies. Surely the God they'd have something subtler than that to spy.
Well,
Um,
you see that's sorry to cut across you, but they're saying they were almost mocking the Americans by doing this. That's what's annoying them. That there seem to be almost sort of like taking the piss.
well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that international relations are that way. Now, it could be that China is flexing its muscles and saying, I wonder what they'll do with this. Let's check them out. But I think it's more likely that the Chinese are, I would take the word for it almost, that there was a weather balloon because I can't see it as a spying implement. The second thing is that the Americans are falling over themselves to find something that'll serve them well in the coming election,
Oh yeah,
over the next couple of years. If Biden can show himself to have muscle and shit this thing down, he looks
yeah,
like
yeah,
the guy who sorted things.
yeah.
Anyway, what would they find out with the balloon? I mean, what would you find out?
Well, Jude, as far as I understand from the news last night, it's the size of three double-decker buses, so it's not exactly small. You
No, but
know,
what's down below? Down below, what's it saying?
I haven't a clue, Jude. I know there's looking to see if they can pick up debris to see what exactly was on board. I
Uh,
don't know what they'll find it. What, Jude, I don't know what it's all about, like, could it be that the Chinese are sort of saying, like, here we're sending over, a two-finger message from the Chinese to the Americans, and as it for domestic consumption. Iran, I can't remember the current chairman of the Communist Party. He has
yeah,
basically installed himself for life. He is much more aggressive. The Chinese economy, I think, has surpassed the American economy in terms of domestic product and all
yeah,
this sort of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Maybe it's a new renaissance for Chinese power, and maybe they're just testing out what's happening out there, and maybe it's also, maybe it's a subtle signaling to the world we're back.
Well, it's not exactly subtle to send a big bloody balloon.
But they're not sending airplanes, but they're just sending a
That's true.
balloon.
Yeah, yeah. So I suppose be graceful for small mercies.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it isn't something. Oh, I wouldn't say it's a storm in a teacup, but I'd say that both sides, well, certainly the American side, are keen to show that they've got whatever it is that's necessary
I
to
have
respond.
to agree with you. I can't see, how much of a threat a weather balloon or a big balloon that's the size of apparently three buses. So I can't, I don't, and that it's so obvious. A spy or surveillance balloon that everyone can see. Not
Aye.
exactly very subtle, is it?
They threatened us with a balloon,
You think that's with a balloon that
so I had to go to
see?
war.
It's a
Anyway,
spy balloon that everybody could see. Yeah, yeah,
they should have had a message on it.
yeah.
You know,
We are China.
something Chinese blank, blank,
Another
blank, you,
export
Joe
to the
Biden.
United States. Go home, Biden.
Okay, let's move on from the Chinese balloon, which is you could have a comic series on that on TV, I think.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
Liz the Whinger, as you describe her.
Uh,
We all know who the Liz is, of course. It's not the least part of the Queen. It's Liz
I
Truss.
think the Tory party, they are certain people who have no shame, absolutely no shame. Liz Truss. Now I haven't read it, so there's no point in me bullshitting that I have, but I've read the synopsis of it.
Yeah.
Liz Truss, the shortest prime minister in British history with 49 days, had a 4,000. It shows how bad her English was when she needs 4,000 words to explain herself. Anyway, 4,000 word article in yesterday's Sunday Telegraph, where she apologized, didn't apologize, sorry, didn't say sorry for her premiership. And I read a thing in the Daily Mirror where the guy said anyone else would have had this sort of the decency to shut up and apologize for what happened. She almost bankrupt the British economy. Working people will be paying for years. Nurses will not be getting pay increases. Postal workers, ambulance drivers, etc., and homeowners will be paying a higher mortgage rate for years to come,
Yep.
thanks to her and quasi Cartang's total incompetence and the run on the pound that I needed. I think was it 45 billion to sort of bring it back down. That's 45 billion they will never get back,
That's
and
right.
that all has an impact. But rather than saying she was wrong, she said she was. By the way, she suggested she was brought down by a sort of a
Left-wing
cohort
conspiracy.
left wing conspiracy. Jesus, does anyone seriously think bankers and
Wall Street,
money
Wall
market
Street
people are
left
left wing?
wingers.
Jeez, everybody, shades of Donald Trump and QAnon. He describes Joe Biden as an extreme left winger. If Joe Biden was in England, he would be a member of the Conservative Party.
Exactly.
Anyway, your turn.
She really, well, you see, I have some sympathy with her in that she very obviously screwed up. She screwed up monumentally, as you say. Everybody, including me, actually, British taxpayers will be paying off the debt that she has created inside 49 days. But I think it's like Brexit. Everybody in their heart knows Brexit was a really, really bad idea. And it's going to be bad for the British economy, and they're going to be paying for that forever. But it's awful hard to admit when you've really seriously screwed up. What are you to say? Like, I'm sorry, I've loaded your children with a debt that'll go on for decades. You've got to, it's too hard. It's too hard to admit that you were wrong. In fact,
Yeah.
you'd almost dig in deeper into the hole because you know you're in the wrong. You don't think so? That's the way
Yeah,
human
but
beings are.
I think there's a massive elephant in the room now in this regards to the British economy. There's a guy, I can't remember his name. Judy was he was a journalist for the Financial Times, so I presume he's a financial background. And he came out with a statement last week that the average poor person in England or Britain, compared to the average poor person in the Republic of Ireland, is 63% worse off.
God,
Now, Jude, when you think about even things like pensions in the Republic of Ireland, pensions in Britain, right? But moving on, the other thing as well, last week, if you remember, the IFM, International Monetary Fund, said the only country in the G7 that will not go into plus
oh
growth
yeah.
next year is the British economy. Jude, what is that telling them?
Well, you know how they responded to that? They said, "Oh, the IMF has got predictions wrong before."
Yeah, sure. You know, dream
Yeah, there's
on.
all the signs of like an economy that's really going to go places now. Um,
Yeah,
to come back to Liz Truss for a moment, I think in a way, apart from being hard to admit that you're wrong, totally wrong, I think she probably still has some vague ambition that she might come back and that she has to start somewhere. I mean, Churchill came back and led Britain through the Second World War. Maybe she thinks she'll do a bounce back as well. I'm sure Boris Johnson has ideas that he'll do the same
oh, you're
thing.
certainly right about Boris.
Yeah, but actually, I think Liz Truss is damaged goods forever. Political goods.
Absolutely.
You remember that American novel, The Scarlet Letter, where the woman that was caught in adultery had to go around with a big A in her.
Nathaniel Hawthorne, wasn't that the author?
That's right. Yeah. A big W, a big A rather. And I'm saying maybe a Scarlet Letter for Liz would be a W for Wrecker.
Yeah.
How do you
She
wreck an
is.
economy?
By the way, I don't know if you're getting onto it yet, but the other thing that I had said, I'm just reading it as well. Apparently Sunak has this idea that he wants to create clear blue water between the Tory party and the Labour Party. And one of the things they've hitched on, apparently, is that they're going to seriously consider opting out of the European Convention on Human Rights.
Yeah.
And apparently, Judah, there's something like 200 articles in there about fair play, about workers' rights, and about everything else. And Sunak and the hard right and the Tory party want to, because they're saying this will play well in the sort of blue collar heartlands where immigration, asylum seekers, guys from Eastern Europe like Poland and Latvia are coming, taking over their jobs, and they think this is going to play well. I'm thinking here, it's almost like the Tory party have become lawless. This was so-called the party of law and order. Now they seem to be wanting, the rules don't apply. Everything that they can think on to sort of undermine the conventions and the rule of law in Britain, they are going against.
Oh yeah. Actually, I have a notion. I heard talk about this quite a while ago when they first came out.
Yeah.
That this is one of the things they were going to shred. But there's a certain horrible logic to it. Like if you're going to, Britain Unchained. Remember somebody? Liz Truss wrote that book. The idea would be no control coming from Europe over our country, our sovereign country of the UK. So if you have to bend the knee to a European Human Rights Act, you're not free. I think somebody said they were going to write their own Bill of Rights, but I wouldn't hold my breath that would protect you very much. But again, you can see how the window dressing of it would go. We're shredding not just trade, but also any power of a sovereign against our sovereignty. We're going to run our own affairs. Well, I sort of see the sense in it, the logic in it, but of course it's really dangerous because that's one of the great things that the European the Union gave to, the state that you live in, is certain guarantees as a European citizen. Alack, we don't have that now. And you may be sure that the Tory party will not, if it does do a Bill of Rights, it'll not be more generous or stronger than the one that's in Europe that they're busy shredding.
No. But the funny thing is, as far as I remember, that one of the main instigators of the European Convention on Human Rights was the British. It's rather strange. Their lawyers were one of the main people putting it
Yes.
forward.
Yeah.
So hey, but Jude, by the way, the other thing that occurs to me, right? There's two parts of this. If the Brits pull out of the European Court of Human Rights or the Convention on Human Rights,
Yeah.
that's going to have implications for Northern Ireland as well. The second thing is, it's come up this last while. I read it yesterday that said, what do the unions do if and it looks, remember last week there was hints that the EU and the UK are now in this tunnel phase,
Yeah.
and that they have an agreement, but they're now going through it with a fine comb. What do unions do if the UK and the EU reach a deal? And now the claim is that Rishi needs a win very, very quickly in the Tory party to give himself a bit of standing.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think this is my guess. My guess is that there is a deal coming. There's been too many, like it was all tunnel stuff. And now on a daily basis, there's Tony Connolly is quoting sources that are saying things about how close they are to a deal. I think a deal is coming. I think it's a deal that the DUP won't like, but there'll be sufficient gloss put on it in terms of this green lane and so on, that they can pretend that there's 7 famous statements that must be, righted. That they'll claim that those have, somehow been met and that they emerge stronger. I think Rishi Sunak has enough on his plate as things are. He doesn't want these guys, and he doesn't like the European Research Group in his own party, and he doesn't like the DUP trying to make the Tories dance to their tune. So I'd say he's going to cater for Britain generally, and try to make himself as strong as possible for the next election. And there are no votes in Northern Ireland for them.
No, you see, no, the thought occurred to me. The EU, Britain right now, if as I said earlier, the G7 are it's the only country in the G7 that is going to go negative growth next year. Can you have negative growth? I don't think you can. Anyway,
I think you can. I think you can actually. Those charts they show where there's red underlined.
Is it not a contradiction? Is it not a contradiction in terms, negative growth?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I think that there is an economic term, but I think in the English language. But if there's going to be negative growth, the Britain, by the way, I came across a thing recently, where it said that the deal that they signed with New Zealand and Australia was worth, in terms of the British economy, not 0.1%. You
couldn't make this stuff up, No,
you can't make this stuff up. And by the way, there's another part of it. The downside for a lot of New Zealand and Australian sheep or meat will be coming in, which will harm British farmers. So that could harm them. Should compare that with their deals with wine and cars and cheese and butter and everything with the EU, where what massive number of trade are massive, like German BMWs, Mercedes Benz, and God knows how much industrial stuff goes out from England. And then they import a few sheep from Australia, and that's a world-class trade deal. You're gotta be kidding. You trade with your nearest neighbours. You don't trade with somebody on the other side of the world.
But I think it's part. I was reading an article about this. I think it's part of this whole thing of Britain having been an empire, losing its empire. I mean, since the 50s, certainly since the 50s with Kenya and all these other places in Africa, and for that matter, places like Australia looking like they're loosening the bonds with Britain. It's no longer an empire. So what role does it have? Well, Maggie Thatcher or whoever, Ted Heath said our future's with Europe, and then they went.
Yeah.
Now they say, oh, we don't like Europe, or we're too diminished, so we'll go out on our own. Now, where in history have you found an empire that lost its empire and then went on to play a more glorious role throughout the world? It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
Just doesn't happen.
And it's very humiliating. It's like I was saying about, admitting, Liz Truss admitting she'd made a mess of things. Likewise, the Brits, it's very hard to say, God, we once were powerful and now nobody gives a crap what we do.
No, but the only thing, there's almost a contradiction As we were saying earlier, the Brits want a deal with the EU, and Rishi Sunak needs a win. And then there's this thing that's come up that they're going to put out the European Convention on Human Rights,
Yeah.
which suggests that, that that's almost self-destructive. So you wonder, are the Tories so dysfunctional now that where they want to one way, they're going to play something domestically that's going to have repercussions further on down the track. Now, maybe this whole thing about throwing out the European Convention on Human Rights, maybe it's just meat for the sort of ravenous ERG group. I just don't know.
Well, I suspect that you're saying that. Well, I was saying that Britain or the UK, what's its role? I haven't mentioned the fact in the world. I haven't mentioned the fact that Scotland is pushing as if it wants to get out of there. Ireland is also looking as if it wants to get out of there. So not only have they lost their place in the world, there's sort of internal dismembering of the UK. So it's a terrible state of affairs to be in. And even within the Tory party itself, they just... I wouldn't want to be a Tory in England now. I really wouldn't.
No, look at the chaos. The nurses are on strike. The teachers are on strike. The ambulance drivers are on strike. The postal workers are on strike or are threatening to strike. And everywhere you look. And then there's all sorts of accusations of Tory wide boys getting rich on this scheme. There's all sorts of dishonest. There's claims made about various Tory politicians pulling stunts and so on. There are also internal divisions within the Tory party. The ERG group wanting one thing, Liz Truss faction, people who want to bring back Boris Johnson. You sort of going, like, how much worse can it get?
I think most of the trade unions and working people in Britain realise that the Tories have screwed them. They've been around for 12 years or whatever. And what's the result of it? Most people are less well off than they were before the Tories came in real terms. Because of inflation.
Yeah, there's a nursing representative says
this is a significant thing, I think, Pat. The fact that the strikes, the way they do the strikes now is more clever than there was in the 70s. They do one-day strikes, whereas remember when the miners went on strike, it was just keeping going. This is more like guerrilla warfare or guerrilla economics. They are doing it a day at a time. And there's so many, as you say, so many different sections of society in Britain that really are feeling the pain. And they know who's to blame. They know that it's the Tory party, and they know the Tory party is ruin itself. They also know the Tory party is filled with liars. People who say things and then don't do them. Or people who do things and say certain things are going to happen and they don't happen. Whether that's the future outside the EU or whether that's Liz Truss saying we're going to do this and great stuff's going to happen. 49 days later, she's out there.
There was a nursing guy on last week. He said the factual position is they are 20% worse off than they were 20 years ago. An actual take-home pay. Right. Look at it as well. Just about everything that's happening in the Tory party right now, it's just showing them that the whole, it's a disaster from start to finish. And they don't know what way they're going, and they don't seem to have policies. They don't seem to have any solutions. And Jude, you just, as you said earlier on, the whole thing, nobody seems to be able to trust a Tory with any sort of thing. So I can't see. No, unless they get a sort of like a war going with Argentina again,
I'd be worried about that, actually. That was the thing that saved Maggie Thatcher's bacon.
She was almost a cert to lose against Kinnock. In fact, the polls at one stage, she was so unpopular, but then she turned it around with the war.
God, that's you've got me worried now, Pat, because I was sort of certain that the Tories would be out. There's such a gap. When you see a Labour Party led by the likes of Keir Starmer having such a lead on the Tories, you know that the Tories really must be bad, because Starmer doesn't exactly inspire confidence either. So you think it's a done deal, but as you say, a little foreign escapade might work rather well. I'm trying to think what it might be. I mean, they've done the Malvinas already. Maybe they'll do Malta or somewhere like that's the next time.
Attack Sicily.
There's a possibility. Possibility. Okay, let's go on because our time is going on. Ukraine is the next one that I had down. Ukraine is looking to join the EU. Does that strike you as a good idea, or for that matter, a likely thing, Pat?
Jude, no matter what way you come at this, I think it'll. I don't think EU will be, Ukraine will be joining the EU tomorrow or anything like it. Jude, I think it'll take some time, and I think that what the EU might say publicly might be one thing. What they say behind the scenes might be another. Uh, I think they're going to have to get the war and over first before they start joining the EU. Now, having said that, Jude, I've listened to some people I would regard, and I don't mean this is the way it sounds, but all right, idiots. There's basically saying Russia.
I like that, Pat. That's a good one. Say that again. I don't mean
Anybody that tries to tell me that Russia are the good guys in terms of Ukraine, go on, give us a break. Yeah. Dude, I am not saying for a second NATO or the Americans or the West is blameless. Far, far from it. I'm not saying that at all. But right, let's get this clear. In Ukraine, Ukraine has been invaded by Russia, huge country, by a president who's been 22 years in power, who's apparently one of the most corrupt persons on earth. Has a former wife owns who was a cleaner, now owns a bank. You know, his political opponents are dead or in jail or poisoned or whatever, and so on. And the people of Ukraine, and I think it was 2018, there's 44 million of them. I think it was 80% or 78% or something voted for Zelensky, and he who wanted to look west, who wanted to be his nation to become more like the West rather than the East, or like Russia. And when you look towards Russia, if you were Ukrainian, would you want to live in a country ruled by the likes of Putin and Medvedev and all those guys who are total corrupt and pretty nasty sort of guys? Whereas for all its faults, and it was a wee bit like the Republic of Ireland in the 1920s. Like there's corruption and there's definitely some strange dealings. But overall, if I was a Ukrainian, I think I would like to look more towards the EU and the West than to look towards Putin's Russia.
Well, I watched a video. I just came across it on YouTube. It's worth checking. Where your mate, Jeremy Corbyn, your house guest, Jeremy Corbyn, was talking to that guy who used to be the deputy political editor in the BBC. I think he's pretty obviously by his colour, skin. He's
John. I know the guy you're on about.
Eastern and bald head and a big sort of walrus mustache.
He's very good, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had an interview with Jeremy Corbyn. I thought Corbyn was very good. The trouble is, Corbyn's very good, and people don't like it. Corbyn said, "Yes, I detest Putin. Putin should not have done what he did." Now, then the interviewer was urging him to say, "Well, would you be in favor of sending tanks to them?" And he said, "Well, I'd support them, but I think the thing we should be looking at is how can we end this?" The Brits don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear people talking that way. Don't tell us anything about stopping fighting. Let's talk about crushing Putin. And they keep talking about Putin's war. Like any war has to end. Any war has to end. And if you want to do it in a way that you want to really humiliate people, well, you'll pay the price for it eventually. I mean, they did it in Germany after the First World War.
But and I know. Boris Johnson went for the simple thing. Haven't ready deal 250 million for each week for Jeremy Corbyn. Even the day me and you sat chatting to him, he was given very complex answers to complex questions, even about deals like Brexit and so on. And let's be honest, dude, that doesn't play with the wee woman going for a fish and chips on a Friday evening or whatever way you want to put it. And I'm not being patronizing. Jeremy lives in the real world, And unfortunately, he's been proved right, Jude, and just about everything. He's been proved right about Northern Ireland, and eventually they have to talk to the IRA and to the Republicans and all the rest of it. He was right on about the nuclear deterrent, about how much money has been spent. He was right that they were going to sell off the NHS to the Americans. That's happening right, left, and centre, and so on. He's been right about just about everything. But hey, when he tries to say, look, you need to talk to people to end wars. As you say, the Americans don't like that. It doesn't play well with the electorate. They want, oh no, I would press the nuclear button. Jeremy says, no, he wouldn't. Oh, that makes him look weak.
Yeah. I think the weakness with Jeremy is that he's proved, as you say, right, time and time again, and he's dealing with complex problems. But you have to be able to present complex problems in a way that people can get their teeth into. If you like, it's like, I know it's a far-fetched comparison, but you remember the Indie Ref in Scotland? They had a 600-page document. Yeah. I mean, how many people read that? 600? What they needed was a compressed version of that.
I'd say about 10 academics and a couple of journalists.
Aye. So what they needed was a one-page, 10 crucial points from it that would be true. And then the other things follow up. Same thing with Jeremy. I would say I agree completely with him. He's a very civilized, sensible man. But I think he doesn't communicate with the same edge as these warmongers, to tell the truth.
No.
Anyway, come back to the point we're making there about the EU and the Ukraine joining it. In a way, the EU is faced with a bit of a problem. These are tough economic times. And what are they doing? They're having to pour money into the Ukraine. I mean, the EU is suffering financially, and they're finding themselves forced to, because of, I suppose, world pressures and God knows what, they're pouring money into the Ukraine. And my understanding of it is, it's unlikely that the Ukraine, which is very big and very poor, will be a member of the EU. It'll be years from now, if ever.
Will be, because it'll take years to reconstruct. No, Jude, I think you might be wrong about it being very poor. The Ukrainians, as a breadbasket, much of Europe, they've been exporting at a massive rate. Wheat and my next door neighbor is a farming guy, and he farms in a reasonably big way. And the very first thing he said to me, Pat, we need to, about this time last year, wasn't it roughly?
Yeah.
He said, Pat, you need to watch it. He says a hell of a lot of our foodstuffs and our grain and stuff comes from Ukraine.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. All right, they do have certain resources, and I did hear that they had some resources that would fit into modern technology very well. But at the same time, you wouldn't say, if you're asked one of the great economic powers in the world, I don't think that Ukraine had jumped to mind at first. Okay, Pat, with 1 minute left. What do you think? What thought would you like to leave our visitors with? I'd like to leave them with an article in the Irish Examiner today, and it says that Sinn Féin are struggling to get people to run for it in the local elections because they did disastrously in 2019. You remember that? Their vote was halved, which is why they were so surprised in the general election. And they're saying, they're having real problems now. Do you think they are likely to have difficulties with when the local election is called? I think it's next year, actually.
Yeah, Jude, I agree with that totally. One of the things that Sinn Féin, all the big parties, Jude, the Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, have numerous councillors on the ground, and that helps get their TDs elected. Sinn Féin, one of the reasons, and that's what surprised everybody, is Sinn Féin could get their TDs elected, but they didn't get too many councillors elected because Jude, they didn't have the last time around, Jude. There are certain counties like sort of Carlow, Laois, places like that, where Sinn Féin doesn't even exist. They don't even have a presence. No, Jude, you've got to say to yourself, how is that going to work when it comes to the general election?
Okay, I'm going out on a limb because we're about 10 seconds left. I'm going to say they're going to do a hell